There's one thing everyone fears: the silence of the late night. When the world is asleep and all that remains is the sound of the wind and your own heartbeat. But for some people, that night wasn't just silence. It was the beginning of a real nightmare. These are true horror stories about people who were completely alone at night. Each story unfolds under the weight of darkness, when there's no one left to call for help. Brace yourself, because sometimes the scariest thing isn't a ghost, but the human standing just outside your door. My detached garage has always been my second living room, a quiet, familiar, oil-scented refuge. It's pretty basic, but deliberately orderly. Concrete floor socket sets lined by size, an old radio that only picks up 2 stations, and a mini fridge full of Dr. Peppers. I spend more time out there than in the house by choice and ritual. Sometimes it feels safer, steadier in its solitude, surrounded by tools than people. I installed a motion light above the creaking wooden side door last summer, after a raccoon decided to treat my trash like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Bright white halogen glare clean sensor housing mounted just right so it wouldn't false trigger. I could see it from my kitchen window, casting a pale, watchful glow. My own little security system, my quiet comfort during long nights. 99 nights out of 100, it stayed quiet, peaceful, almost boring. Then came that cold November night. I just finished rebuilding an alternator, packed up, and shut off the breaker that powers the garage. Before heading inside, I looked back. The light was off. Everything. The way it should be. Quiet routine and perfectly ordinary. I poured myself a Coke over ice, let the TV drone softly in the background, and saw the light flash on through the kitchen window. That kind of thing grabs your eye instantly, a single sudden glow cutting through the calm. White flooding a space that should be black. The sudden glare painted everything wrong, like daylight in the dead of night. I went to the window, lifted the blinds, and looked out. The yard glowed like daylight. Every shadow looked frozen, watching back. No movement, no cat, no wind. The oak tree barely stirred. Its branches looked carved from bone-white light. I stood there waiting for something to justify it. Nothing. After about 30 seconds, the light timed out. I muttered something about the sensor being too sensitive, and went back to my drink. But the silence after felt unnaturally thick. 2 minutes later, the uneasy silence shattered again with a faint flicker of light. It flared again. This time, I knew I hadn't imagined it. My pulse quickened beneath the hum of the house. I walked to the laundry room, flipped the breaker off to kill power to the garage. The silence deepened into thick, almost living darkness. Waited, then switched it back on. Before I'd even dropped my hand, that cursed fluorescent light snapped back to life, buzzing like something aware. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to ghosts or nonsense, but something about that glow felt wrong, like it was watching back. I fix engines for a living. When something behaves wrong, you test the variables. That's how I survive the unknown nights. So I grabbed my wrench, habit more than weapon, and stepped outside. The night had that metallic, heavy quiet wrapping around the yard, the kind you only get near midnight. Nothing but the neighbor's air conditioner buzzing softly down the block like a warning. When I reached the garage, I tried the side door, feeling the cold handle tighten my nerves. The handle turned the cold metal trembling faintly in my hand, latch pulled back, but the door only moved an inch before stopping dead. It didn't hit wood. It hit something soft with weight, like a shoulder leaning back from the other side. The air turned heavy with sudden dread. There's no deadbolt on that door. There's no reason it should resist. Every instinct screamed to stop pushing, yet I pressed again, felt that subtle give, then a definite push back. Someone was there breathing just beyond the door. The kind of resistance that says someone's definitely holding it from the other side, a weight that feels too alive to be the wind. I took one slow step back, heart hammering through my chest. Then instinct took over. I lifted my boot and kicked the door hard, fueled by raw panic right near the handle. The wood jolted forward with a solid thud and the door blew open. A man fell backward violently onto the cold concrete, catching himself on one arm, eyes wide. In that blinding flash of panic, he'd been leaning against it, holding it shut. Before I could say a word, the night split open behind me. Another man came from behind me, out of the dark, near the fence. He hit me in the shoulder and I went down hard. For half a second, all I saw were boots, shadows, and the sudden white glare of the motion light flooding the yard. My brain caught up a beat later. Two men, both rough, both breathing heavy. Not kids, not pranksters, real danger in living flesh. I rolled fast, scrambled to my feet, and ran. Heart pounding louder than the rain. I didn't think, just moved. I cut across the short path to the house, mud splashing under each desperate step, slammed the kitchen door behind me, and locked everything handle, deadbolt chain. My hands shook as I backed up toward the counter, breathing sharp and uneven, grabbing the phone. Through the kitchen window, I could still see one man limp toward the other and help him up. They both looked straight at the house, silent and deliberate, their figures framed by the trembling light. One of them cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, his voice echoing through the cold night, "We'll be back. We'll collect on that." Then they disappeared toward the alley. I stayed by the window, heart pounding in the dim light, phone pressed to my ear, talking to the dispatcher. She told me to stay put, to keep eyes on the yard if I could. I whispered what I saw, every breath, every flicker of motion. Two men, one in a dark jacket, one limping, moving west toward the fence. The motion light blinked off, plunging everything into complete suffocating blackness around me. Patrol cars arrived in less than 10 long, tense minutes, light sweeping both ends of the narrow, wet alleyway. I let the first officer and his radio crackling faintly behind him. We went around back together, hearts pounding under the cold air. The side door hung crooked now, its frame splintered and trembling, one hinge nearly torn. On the concrete, a faint smear of dirt and dragged footprints led toward the alley, disappearing into the night's silent void. Someone had fallen hard, the sound still echoing faintly in the silence. The officer crouched, shone his flashlight across the floor, cutting through layers of dust and dread. "Could have gone bad fast," he said, his voice low and cautious. He checked the roll-up next. The padlock had been flipped through and snapped shut from the outside, as if someone wanted to seal the fear in. He angled the beam low across the metal. The light caught a fresh handprint on the door, bigger and rougher than mine, pressed deep in the dust, sliding down as if someone had grabbed for balance. Boot marks overlapped near the threshold, each one blurring into the other, like panic frozen in motion. Two distinct pairs of footprints marked the wet ground. Two pairs, one tread heavy, one half dragged. "You sure you didn't know them?" he asked. I shook my head, feeling a deep chill spreading inside me. They searched the alley, but found nothing else. Just silence thick with leftover tension. Just a scuffed patch of dirt by the fence where someone had climbed over in a hurry. No tools, no ladder, no vehicle, just fear left behind. Still, the officer took photos and wrote up the report. The flash from his camera cut through the cold night. After the police left, I sat by the quiet kitchen table with the blinds cracked open, staring at the dark and empty yard where those men had stood. Every few minutes, I thought I saw faint movement near the wooden fence, but it was just my racing nerves, flicking at shifting shadows. Sleep didn't happen that night. Around 3 a.m., I grabbed a small yellow pad of paper and started making a list. Bolt inside door first, never forget again. Move tool chest into house. No more lonely night work allowed after 10 p.m. Ask neighbor to watch the alley. By sunrise, I had already installed the bolt and dragged my tool chest into the dining room. It looked ridiculously out of place, yet strangely comforting next to the table, but it made me feel better, like I'd closed the distance between safe sanity and stupid lucky survival. I told myself that was the end of it. But fear doesn't disappear that easily at night. That night, I was in my zone, fully locked in my teenage bubble headset on friends yelling about loadouts, space heater buzzing under my desk, parents out for the night. It was the perfect setup. I was 17, bored, and just trying to make it to graduation. Our split-level house in Des Moines was the very picture of quiet safety and calm suburban life. Quiet street, the kind of peaceful suburb where nothing changes, nosy neighbors, nothing ever happened. The only light in my room came from the monitor and the LEDs on my keyboard. My parents were out celebrating my aunt's birthday. My mom texted me, "Don't stay up too late," which basically meant I know you will anyway. Everything felt completely normal and safe until the window went dark for like half a second. Just a tiny shift of shadow moved nervously across the blinds. I froze, looked at the time, exactly 11:47 p.m., then unmuted my headset. "Probably the cat," I said, trying to sound calm and normal. Logan laughed. "Since when do you have a cat?" "Since never," I said, acting like it was no big deal, but my heart raced. Still, I kept looking back at that inch-wide gap between the blinds, feeling the cold tension crawl slowly upward. The reflection of the cold, glowing screen made it impossible to see much, just the faint gray of the snowbank outside and a darker shape near it. I told myself it was nothing, just the restless wind or my tired eyes. Maybe the streetlight flickering again in the distance. Another round started the game's faint chatter, filling the silence. I leaned back to stretch, and the shadow moved again, this time slower, like someone crouched just outside waiting for me to notice. I muted chat. The rest of the house felt too still, the kind of stillness that listens back. I waited for a sound, a crunch in the snow, a knock, but there was nothing. I told myself not to look, because looking might make it real. Driven by uneasy, trembling curiosity, I lifted one blind slat with my finger. A man crouched inches from the glass, his shadow merging with the pale moonlight outside face, partly hidden by a hoodie. His breath fogged the cold window slowly, and his lips were moving, forming words I couldn't hear. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't frantic. He was whispering directly to me, calm and deliberate. I didn't scream. Just a tiny shift of shadow moved nervously across the blinds. I froze, looked at the time, exactly 11:47 p.m., then unmuted my headset. "Probably the cat," I said, trying to sound calm and normal. Logan laughed. "Since when do you have a cat?" "Since never," I said, acting like it was no big deal, but my heart raced. Still, I kept looking back at that inch-wide gap between the blinds, feeling the cold tension crawl slowly upward. The rest of the house felt too still, the kind of stillness that listens back. I waited for a sound, a crunch in the snow, a knock, but there was nothing. I told myself not to look, because looking might make it real. I didn't even breathe right away. I just stayed frozen, completely still, in the dim light, half bent at the window, staring while my brain tried to process it. The lips kept moving, forming syllables. Each motion deliberate, disturbingly slow and intimate. He looked calm, focused, like he wanted me to read his lips. That thought alone made my chest tighten painfully hard. I backed away quietly, heart pounding loud enough to break the silence. Someone's outside my window. He's crouched, low, unmoving, hidden by the darkness, and he's watching me. The dispatcher asked for my address and told me to stay on the line. "Can you move away from the window?" she said. I whispered. "Already did. He's still there. I can feel it." From the corner of my eye, I could still see the faint movement, the slow, rhythmic shadow of his breathing, fogging the glass, erasing it, fogging again. "He's still there," I said. "Are your doors locked?" "Yes." My voice shook. The air felt thick, alive with dread. "Stay on the phone with me. Officers are on the way." I edged slowly and carefully down the hall, keeping my trembling back flat against the wall. The floor creaked softly once, and I stopped breathing, afraid even the sound of my pulse might give me away. The dispatcher kept talking, her steady voice grounding me with small questions. What color hoodie? What direction he was facing? If I could see his hands. Gloves, I said, both hands on the sill. There was a pause. Stay where you are, she said. Don't try to get a better look, as if I even dared to move. Then came the sound I'll never forget. A slow, deliberate rhythm, a soft tap on the glass. One fingertip, then a slow drag down the cold window surface, like tracing a line. Not a knock, not aggression, just communication. A signal from the darkness itself. He wanted me to react. The dispatcher must have heard something in my silence. Is he trying to talk to you again? I said yes. My mouth was dry, heart racing. Officers are close. Keep quiet. Through the blinds, dim and trembling headlights swept the living room walls. Someone slowly turning onto our lonely street. The man outside turned his head toward it. His hood shifted just enough for me to see part of his face. Light skin, tired eyes, rough, stubble, maybe late 20s. His mouth stopped moving. Then the sound of snow compressing under heavy boots, 1 step 2, and he disappeared from the window, swallowed by the frozen night silence. I didn't move until the dispatcher said, "They're right outside your door now. Do you see red and blue lights?" The glow slowly pulsed across the dusty blinds, painting the walls with color. I nodded, then remembered she couldn't see me. "Yeah," I whispered, voice shaking. 2 officers came to the door, one tall and calm, one smaller, younger, both radiating control. I led them to the room. The taller one gripped his flashlight, firmly pointing the beam toward the window where shadows still lingered from what just happened. The detective leaned closer under the flickering light. "You open this tonight." "No." He angled the light across the screen, then frowned. The reflection made his face look even more tense. "That's a clean cut." The rectangle of screen about the size of a book had been sliced on all 4 sides. It was so precise, almost surgical in its edges. It still sat perfectly in place. You wouldn't notice unless you looked close. He used the tip of a pen to push it. The moment felt painfully slow and silent. It fell inwards, soundlessly. The hollow space behind it breathed a quiet dread. The edges were unnaturally clean and gleaming, sharp, smooth, razor sharp. The other officer came in from outside, holding a small plastic cap. His breath fogged in the frozen air. "Found this in the mulch," he said. "Utility knife piece." They swept the yard carefully. The snow had faint footprints barely visible under the porch light, leading to the window and looping back like someone doubling their trail. Each print sank shallow, showing deliberate caution. No car tracks, no neighbors awake. They wrote the report. The whole thing took maybe 30 long, nerve-wracking minutes of trembling silence. My parents got home halfway through. Mom panicking, voice shaking as she clutched her purse. Dad trying not to. The officer explained everything calmly, his tone steady, professional, almost comforting. He told them to add a dowel to the sliding doors and move my desk away from the window. When they left, my dad pushed the couch against the window like a small barrier against the night. Anyway, my mom made warm, nervous hot chocolate that night because that's what she does when she doesn't know what else to do. I just sat there in total silence, heart pounding hard, staring at the blinds, trying to replay what he'd been mouthing. It wasn't help me. It wasn't please. It was slower, almost conversational. And somehow it felt practiced, intentional. "I can see you." That's the phrase my brain keeps landing on, even if I never actually heard it. The next day, I moved my desk to the opposite wall. Took half an hour. It felt stupid, like rearranging furniture could fix something, but that simple change felt like taking back control. Facing away from the glass made it easier to breathe. I tried gaming with my friends again, hoping the noise would drown out my thoughts. Couldn't focus. Every flicker in my peripheral made me twitch, as if shadows still carried his presence nearby. Logan said softly, but firmly, "You good man?" I said, trying to sound calm. "Yeah." Then I logged off early. For months, I couldn't stop replaying that quiet, skin-crawling moment, the faint fog of his breath, the shape of his lips moving, the control in it. He wasn't trying to break in right away. He was testing invisible boundaries, seeing how close he could get, how long he could hold eye contact without me calling for help. It wasn't about the house. It was about power, proximity, and fear itself. It was about me. That realization sank deeper and colder than I ever expected. The cops never caught him. They called it a prowler case, just another unsolved midnight story. Probably some guy testing locks. That's what they said. But locks don't explain the whispering lips near my window, the perfect rectangle, the patience. The thing about fear is it doesn't end when the danger leaves. It just hides inside quieter moments, finding smaller ways to stay. Now, whenever I pass that window, a chill crawls down my spine. I look away. My mom eventually moved the couch back, said the living room looked weird. I let her, but my desk stayed where it is, facing the wall. That small choice felt like control. Logan said softly, but firmly, "You good man," I said, trying to sound calm. "Yeah." Then I logged off early. For months, I couldn't stop replaying that quiet, skin-crawling moment, the faint fog of his breath, the shape of his lips moving, the control in it. He wasn't trying to break in right away. He was testing invisible boundaries, seeing how close he could get, how long he could hold eye contact without me calling for help. It teaches you new rules about your own home rules, written quietly in fear and survival. How to move, where to stand, when to breathe. I've thought about what would have happened if I'd leaned in, if curiosity had replaced caution for one heartbeat. Maybe that's what he was waiting for. The split second when I'd move closer, and the latch would be within reach. So I keep my distance from windows, from assumptions, from the idea that home automatically means safe. That night rewired me completely, turning safety into awareness forever. And every time I see my reflection in the glass after those long haunting nights, I think about that man kneeling in the cold, mouthing words I never heard, and how close I came to finding out what they were. The silence that followed still breathes inside me. Old houses talk. That's what I tell people when they visit and comment on the noises. The creaks, whispers, and sighs never truly stop. Mine says hello on step 4 and complains on step 9. It's like a living metronome keeping rhythm with my nights. Each sound, a reminder that memories never sleep. I'm a grad assistant at the university in Ann Arbor. Between grading freshman essays and paying rent that eats half my stipend, I've learned to love the quiet. My roommate Matt usually fills the place with noise. When he left, the house suddenly felt heavier, almost breathing around me. He was gone that weekend, visiting his parents in Grand Rapids, leaving me alone with a drafty house, a pot of coffee, and 70 pages of unpolished student writing. The stillness pressed close, as if listening to every turn of a page. The dining table was my grading station. Laptop, mug, highlighter, stack of essays, everything in its proper place. From where I sat, I could see the hallway and the start of the staircase half lost in shadow. The air felt heavy, too still for this late hour. Step 4 had its distinct creak, low and round like a throat clearing. It always sounded like someone testing if I was awake. Step 9 was higher pitched, almost irritated. I realized I'd memorized those sounds too well. My detached garage has always been my second living room, a quiet, familiar, oil-scented refuge. It's pretty basic, but deliberately orderly. Concrete floor socket sets lined by size, an old radio that only picks up 2 stations, and a mini fridge full of Dr. Peppers. I spend more time out there than in the house, by choice and ritual. Sometimes it feels safer, steadier, in its solitude, surrounded by tools than people. I didn't even look up at first. "Hey Matt," I called out. "You back early?" Nothing. I waited for the follow-up. The complaint of step 9, the shuffle of shoes, maybe the sound of his duffel bag hitting the floor. Nothing came. The silence folded in tight again. The house cooled a little, or maybe I just noticed it more. I rubbed my wrist, listening. Houses settle, I told myself. Wood expands. Unnervingly, excuses expand too. I went back to the essay. The radiator hissed. The fridge clicked. All normal sounds for now. Then it happened again. The same creak. Step 4. Identical pitch, identical tone too, perfectly identical. You don't get the same note twice, unless something stayed there, someone nearby. I set my pen down, heart tightening. The heater clicked off, and suddenly the silence felt louder, like a held breath. I listened for footsteps continuing or retreating. Nothing. The silence felt charged, like the house was waiting for me to respond, every nerve awake. I picked up my phone and opened the voice memo app. It was half curiosity, half nerves. I hit record and set it on the table hush, letting it capture the room tone. If there was another sound, I'd finally have undeniable proof it wasn't imagination. 30 seconds went by. Then, a minute. The house didn't breathe. Then I heard it, a faint chilling whisper of motion, super soft like fabric sliding against wood, like someone shifting where they stood on the stairs. I stood slowly, heart pounding through absolute silence. I reached for the nearest thing that felt like a weapon, a simple pen shaking in my hand. It's funny how fragile and trembling small confidence becomes when the world shrinks to the edge of a doorway. The staircase waited in the deep, motionless dark. I could see the top half of the stairs, but not the risers. Step 4 felt like a shadow watching me. We keep a light switch at the bottom of the staircase. I stared at it, frozen by quiet panic, debating. If someone stood on that step, they'd see me reaching. Enough, I whispered to myself, heart racing. I flipped the switch. The bulb flooded the stairs in light. No movement, no shadow, just 12 old steps rising into the stillness, but each second felt heavier than before. Light gives shape to fear. The brightness only confirmed what darkness hid. The air was thick and motionless, pressing against my chest. I was alone in the room, but not convinced that I'd been alone before. Every heartbeat echoed inside my skull. I stayed there for maybe 10 seconds, listening so hard my ears felt pressurized. Even silence began to sound alive. Then I started climbing slowly, with my heartbeat pounding 1 foot at a time. Step 1, fine. Step 2, the air felt heavier. Step 3, fine. Step 4 gave its usual creak under my weight, the exact same sharp, eerie note. I took another few steps up, and halfway, a sudden cold draft swept across my ankles, making me freeze. I reached the landing and turned toward the back hallway, the shadows stretching longer than they should. From there, I had a clear line of sight to the kitchen and the back door. It was open, about 3 inches wide, held only by the small chain limiter we never bothered to remove. The door rocked slowly in the cold wind, its sound hollow and uneven. I didn't rush forward. I stood still, listening to the faint creaks of wood, staring at the tiny wedge of black beyond the doorframe. My body acted before I could think it through. Heart pounding in my ears, I walked back down the stairs, quiet as I could manage. At the bottom, I turned left into the kitchen. The air was noticeably colder there, thick with the kind of silence that made my heartbeat echo in my ears. I could see my breath when I exhaled, white clouds hanging like ghosts in front of me. The door swayed slightly against the chain, a soft creak cutting through the still air. I reached for it, then stopped short, every instinct, screaming for caution. A faint smear of snow dust lay across the threshold, just enough to show where a single boot had turned before vanishing into the night. I eased the door closed slowly, holding my breath in silence, until the latch caught and the chain slackened. The house exhaled again, or maybe that was just me trembling inside. I called the non-emergency police line because 911 felt dramatic. What seems to be the issue, I think someone was inside. I said, my voice barely steady under fear. Back doors open, and I heard something on the stairs. any sign of forced entry. Not really, I said, just something feels off tonight, painfully wrong. She told me to wait outside under the dim yellow porch light if I could near a light. I grabbed my coat, pulled on boots, without socks, and stepped onto the porch. Cold wind cut through the silence like a warning. A patrol car pulled up within 5 minutes. I walked the officer through what happened. Latch plate's been shaved, he said, crouching to show me. The flashlight beam glinted off the metal edge. The screws around the strike plate were bright silver, freshly worked. Every small detail screamed deliberate intrusion. This wasn't wear and tear. Someone's tried this door before. He shone the steady, narrow beam of light carefully toward the fence that bordered the alley. Boards loose and splintered, he added, just enough for a foot to slip under. Fresh snow clearly disturbed here too. Kids, I offered, forcing a weak, nervous smile, hoping for an easy answer. He didn't look up. Maybe. Or someone testing houses. He paused briefly and scribbled quietly in his notebook, then said, "Replace those screws. Use stronger 3-inch ones this time. Add a bar if you can, and put a chime on the door at night. It'll wake you before anything else moves." He made it sound like routine maintenance, but I could tell he didn't like what he saw. The second he stepped away into the cold silence, it got weirdly quiet. Not chill, just too quiet. I walked the house again, counting where each floorboard complained which steps, saying sharper, as if the house was quietly remembering me. I pressed on the back door and watched how far the latch ceded before catching. Then I sat on the creaking wooden step 4, listening carefully to the house breathe around me. I slept on the couch that night with the light over the sink left on. For the first time in days, no sudden jolts awake, no nightmares. Matt came back the next weekend. He laughed when I told him, then looked uneasy when I showed him the fresh, deep latch plate marks glinting under the light. We bought longer reinforced screws and installed a heavy door bar together. He tested the creaking 4th step carefully afterward and said, "House still says hi." We laughed, though our nervous laughter felt painfully forced. People think the scariest part of a break-in is the idea of danger. It's not. It's the idea that someone once stood inside your private silence and learned your routine from the quiet inside walls. They knew which step talked first. Every creak became their silent weapon. They chose when to make it talk again. I don't know who they were or what they wanted. I only know the back door chain didn't hold that cold, unforgettable night, and that one board in the stairs still flexes under pressure. I still test it with my boots sometimes, like I'm daring the past to speak again. If you ask me why I'm certain there really was someone there that night, I'd tell you this. The house itself still remembers. Old houses are unpredictable, but they don't lie. They speak their language of echoes. They creak from temperature. They shift under pressure. But they don't repeat the same note twice in perfect unison. That's human wait. That's someone waiting in the quiet dark. That's someone deciding whether to move or to wait. Finals week turns everyone into a zombie. I was surviving on iced coffee, cold fear energy bars, and blind hope. My apartment in Gainesville was small, quiet, and eerily ordinary at night. Just a bed, desk, and a closet, with a door that never quite shut right. Every time I looked up from my notes, that thin line of darkness between the door and frame seemed alive, quietly watching me. It sounds stupid now, but that night it really started to bother me. So before sitting down to study, I got up, pushed the door until it latched, and firmly wedged one of my old sneakers against it, hoping that would finally keep the dark out. Solved. By 1:47 a.m., I was barely awake and shivering slightly over my laptop when I heard a click. I looked up. The closet door had slowly and silently bled open again, just a sliver, maybe half an inch. I stared for a while, heart thudding quietly in my chest, waiting for it to move more. It didn't. Still, something about that tiny gap felt deeply, unnaturally wrong. I told myself it was the hinge, maybe air from the fan, but I still took a picture and sent it to my mom with a text that said, "Your paranoid daughter is losing it again tonight." I closed it one more time, wedged the sneaker tighter under the door, and went back to studying, trying to calm my racing mind. At some point, I must have drifted off at my desk. When I opened my eyes again, it was 4:03 a.m., and the room was dark except for one light. The narrow closet door stood slightly open, a soft bluish glow pulsing from inside. My phone was right there on the desk. Whatever was glowing in there, it wasn't mine. The sneaker had been kicked aside as if something had come out quietly. The door was wide open, and I could see the faint shifting outlines of my clothes swaying slightly like air was moving from inside the closet outward. Then came a soft but unmistakable sound, like a fingernail tapping on plastic somewhere deep inside. Every muscle in my body locked in absolute terror. I didn't breathe, didn't move. I just stared into that dim, glowing light, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, while realizing I wasn't alone. The light shifted, dimmed, then brightened again, casting uneasy shadows across the narrow hallway, like someone adjusting a phone flashlight. I backed toward the bathroom, heart pounding faster with every flicker, grabbed my phone and slipped inside. The second I turned the lock, I called 911. My shaking hands barely found the right buttons. I could barely get the words out. My voice was shaking, but the dispatcher stayed calm, guiding me through shallow breaths and quiet pauses, asking me to stay quiet and describe what I'd seen. I told her about the light, the door, the faint echo of footsteps fading beyond the wall, and the sound. She told me to keep the door locked until the officers arrived. While I whispered into the phone, I heard movement, slow, deliberate footsteps crossing my carpeted hallway. They stopped right outside the bathroom. My hand was trembling so badly that the phone brushed against the tile. That tiny noise seemed deafening in the cold, motionless silence that followed. Then I heard the faintest sound, a shallow exhale close enough to feel like someone exhaling through their nose. The dispatcher must have heard the trembling fear and rapid breathing in my voice because she told me to stay on the line, that the officers were close. Within minutes, the heavy silence finally shattered apart violently. I heard doors banging open, voices shouting police, and heavy boots rushing down the hallway. When they reached my apartment, heart pounding like a trapped drum inside my chest, I unlocked the bathroom door. The officers swept the place fast, guns drawn. One of them opened the closet and immediately called for urgent tactical backup. The fire escape window was cracked open. There were fresh, muddy footprints clearly visible on the sill trailing down the wall outside. Inside the closet, under a hoodie I didn't recognize, was a cheap burner phone. The screen was still lit, its flashlight app running. One officer picked it up with gloves. He quietly muttered. He used this to see, he said, his voice low and uneasy. That cold, early morning silence hung heavy. No SIM card. They checked the latch on the window. It was bent awkwardly, almost pleading for repair. Screws loose. Whoever it was had pried it open just enough to slide in. The air still smelled faintly of dust and fear. They dusted for prints, only partials smudged incomplete. Each mark felt like a ghost's signature. That night, the officers stayed until sunrise, walking the perimeter and quietly scanning every shadow of the neighboring buildings. They didn't find anyone. When they left, they suggested I stay somewhere else for a few days. That night felt painfully endless and hollow. I packed a bag and went to my friend Rachel's place. Her small apartment felt like borrowed safety. A week later, I moved apartments far from that shadowed neighborhood. Top floor this time. No fire escape, no reachable windows. New locks, bright hallway lights, and heavier doors. Some nights I'll wake up at random, heart pounding in perfect silence, completely still, not sure why. My eyes will drift toward the closet, searching for that faint, familiar blue glow. But that's the thing. Once you've seen a door open on its own and realized someone else was behind it, you never look at silence the same way again. You start sleeping lighter, heart racing at every small creak, and you never ever leave the closet door cracked again. People always say breakups hurt because of silence, but sometimes silence itself becomes the thing you fear most. No more late night calls, no texts lighting up your phone. For me, silence was never the problem. The problem was realizing that even silence can breathe with hidden intent. Her name was Danielle. We were together for 3 years. She was passionate, unpredictable, and had this way of making you feel like you were the center of her world. At first, I thought that this burning intensity was real love, but over time, it felt more like being watched every single night than being wanted. When I finally ended it, she didn't cry or beg. She just said with a calm yet unsettling tone, "You'll feel me again before you forget me." I brushed it off as something dramatic people say when they're hurt. I blocked her number, boxed up her things, locked them deep inside my closet, and tried to get my life back to normal. That winter, I was recovering from a small surgery and sleeping light because of the meds. My apartment in quiet, snowy Denver felt safe and fragile warm, and finally starting to feel like mine again. It was around 2:19 in the silent morning when I woke up to the mattress dipping near my knees, not the casual kind of shift you get when you move your legs or roll over. This was pressure deliberate, slow and unsettling, like someone was sitting down carefully, trying not to wake me. The air felt thick with presence, and I stayed perfectly still. The room was dark. I listened, waiting for the sound of the furnace or pipes, any familiar hum to calm my nerves. Instead, I heard breathing. It was soft and close enough that it moved the hair on my neck. For a few seconds, I convinced myself it was me. Maybe my CPAP machine had shifted, or maybe I was half dreaming, but the rhythm didn't match my own breath. It came between mine, as if someone unseen shared the same air. I whispered Danielle nothing. The air felt thick and suffocating, heavy with that strange quiet before a scream. Then just when I reached for the lamp chain, the breathing stopped, like whoever it was knew exactly what I'd do next. I hesitated, feeling my pulse in my throat. Then I yanked it hard. The lamp flicked on, flooding the room with harsh, shaking yellow light. No one. The spot beside my legs was still indented, pressed deep into the mattress as if someone had just left. And the strangest part, the sheets were warm, alive, with lingering presence. I pressed my hand into the dip. It felt like someone had just been there, the warmth still clinging faintly beneath my palm. That's when the smell hit me, a sudden, suffocating wave of memory and fear. Vanilla mixed with cigarette smoke. Danielle's perfume. She used to drown herself in it before bed, said it made her dreams sweet. I got out of bed fast, scanning the room, heart pounding loud enough to drown the silence. The door was shut, windows locked, but the air still felt occupied, recently disturbed. Everything looked untouched. Still, I couldn't shake that strange and heavy, lingering scent. I checked the living room, the kitchen, even the hallway closet, every corner where shadows could breathe. Nothing. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was memory nerves, or leftover perfume on something she'd left behind. Then I went back to the bedroom and noticed the half-closed bathroom door glowing faintly. It was open about an inch. I'd closed it earlier that night. I stood there, phone in hand, heart hammering against the silence, staring at the black gap between the door and frame. I thought about walking away. Instead, I took one slow step forward and nudged the door. It creaked just a little, and from inside came the faintest sound, a single trembling inhale of something alive. That was all it took. I slammed the door shut, heart pounding with raw panic, twisted the lock on my bedroom handle, and dialed 911. I whispered everything to the dispatcher. Terror made my voice tremble uncontrollably, so badly she had to ask me to repeat the address twice. She told me to stay locked in, stay quiet, and breathe slowly and wait for the officers. While I was on the phone, I heard movement, soft, deliberate footsteps behind the door. They were still in the room. I pressed my back against the door, my heartbeat thundering like heavy drums, holding the phone so tight my hand hurt. The silence between each second felt endless. I didn't move until I heard the distant, echoing wail of approaching sirens. The footsteps stopped. A moment later, 3 sharp bangs shook the front door. Police. When I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. The bathroom door was wide open. The officers swept the apartment, guns drawn, their flashlights slicing through the tense air. They didn't find anything at first. Then, one of them checked the hall closet, the one I almost never even opened, and called for backup. She was crouched there, Danielle. She was pale, her hair matted, eyes hollow from sleepless nights, an obsession wearing the same hoodie she'd taken when she left me. Her eyes looked glassy, unfocused, haunted by something beyond exhaustion, like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't scream or fight, just stared blankly as reality fell apart. She just looked at me and whispered, her eyes hollow and trembling, "You left the window unlocked." They took her out in handcuffs. When they searched her bag, they found a set of my house keys, the silver ones. I'd searched everywhere for the spare set I thought I'd lost months earlier. Later, they told me she'd been living nearby, sleeping in her car behind an old strip mall, completely alone in silence. She'd broken in quietly and deliberately 3 nights in a row, waiting until I was asleep before coming out from the closet or hallway. They think she was patiently watching me every second. That night, I didn't sleep, not after the police left, not after the gray dawn sunlight crept through the blinds. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the window. She mentioned the latch was slightly bent, a small clue I'd ignored for weeks. I moved out exactly 2 weeks later, leaving behind the echo of footsteps that never truly faded. New apartment, fresh air, but heavy memories. New locks, top floor, no fire escape. But now I keep a chair firmly propped every single night under my doorknob. I sleep with my body tense and facing the door. And every time I wake up in the middle of the night, I listen not for creaks, not for wind, but for the faint echo of breathing that once changed how I see darkness forever. Because I know what it sounds like when someone who used to love you decides they can't let go. That slow whispering ache that crawls into your sleep. And the scariest part isn't the night she came back. It's knowing that for weeks before that, she was already there, standing in the quiet, watching, breathing inches from my face, waiting, breathing beside my bed. If these stories made you look twice at the shadows in your own home, you're officially part of the family bound by fear, memory, and midnight silence. Smash that like button, subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and drop your own late night scare in the comments. I read everyone. And if you think summer is all beaches and bonfires, this next one will change that completely. Click now to watch 4 of the most chilling and unforgettable horror stories from last summer. Because some memories don't fade, they rot slowly under the sun. Thanks for watching, stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you again in the next haunting nightmare. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If you'd like to share your own story to be featured in an upcoming video, please email me at nighthorrorstoriesyes@gmail.com. Every story has the power to touch someone's heart, and who knows, maybe your story will be the next one told. Send it in today and let's share unforgettable moments together.